Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here. Welcome to another edition of Court Call with Ronnie Nunn, a special Christmas Eve edition. Ronnie, I hope you're getting your stockings stuffed.
Hey, that's a good basketball term. And I got my Santa here to remind anybody in the house who hasn't gotten me anything to be mindful to get it for Dad.
That's right. Make sure you got your gifts all ready to go. We don't want anyone angry. Well, let's move on to our first call because we have a lot of Atlanta Hawks fans that were furious that LeBron James was not called for an offensive foul on this, frankly, incredible display of athleticism as he went to the hole and dunked it over Paul Milsap. So what are you seeing here and how is this should be called?
Well, you know, this is one of the unique plays in the game where I think the officials are trying to make a judgment, though there's a demarcation, as you know, for a block charge involving the restricted area. Now, the defender gets there timely, and all of a sudden, LeBron is going up into the air, and by the time the contact really occurs, it's almost as if he's got the dunk and the contact at the same time. And it kind of has a marginal flavor about it because he jumps so high. Now, I think this play is not called because technically it's a charge. But however, if you recall the Vince Carter play of some years ago where he had a phenomenal dunk that went viral. And he actually, I think, had his knees above the shoulder of the defender and his stretched out arm got to the hoop almost simultaneously with the contact. And of course, there was no call. I think this is a similar kind of pattern and thought by the official on this play. I would have a hard time calling an offensive foul when all of a sudden the contact and the flush seem to be virtually at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great play by Milsap, and it's worth trying, and certainly there was quite a bit of contact, but again, you have to worry about the notion of LeBron James getting like some sort of extra benefit. We've talked about this a lot in the past, and it sounds like in your mind it was just one of those bang-bang plays. The dunk happened almost simultaneously with the contact, and if that happens, it's probably the best to sort of have no call at all.
Yeah, and I think it's right to say it about LeBron James because people think that. But I think really in the way this play unfolds for all of us, having had the Vince Carter play, we don't see this very often. But I guarantee the official saw this play from the feet up as he should for the restricted area, and by the time he got up to the contact, the ball was just about in a flush. Now, technically, okay, I'll give you the offensive foul because he was there. But in the spirit of the game, this happened too close, and his ability to get to the hoop on that kind of contact, I could see why he let it go.
Let's move on to Wilson Chandler shooting a free throw against the Phoenix Suns, and it caught my eye because on the second free throw, he fakes it, and the referees come in and stop it and then let him have the ball again. And my interpretation has always been if you fake a free throw like that, it should be you should lose that free throw opportunity. What is that rule?
Well, you said it perfectly. If you fake a free throw, you actually lose the opportunity to shoot that free throw because everybody comes in and there's no faking of free throws in the NBA. But the bottom line is, though, if an official believes that the ball may have slipped from his hand and that's why he regrouped himself to shoot it, then there's an exception to that rule. Now, this is a very tight slip because sometimes the balls actually slip out of the guy's hand. But in this case, he might have dislodged the ball somehow and didn't have it and did it coincidentally. And if the officials see it that way, they're correct. If they sense the shooter had a problem on the release right there, you can give him another shot and take the weight on that.
Let's move on to a Kevin Love, a real interesting companion play where Kevin Love, at the end of the quarter, gets 3 free throws for shooting a very long shot and getting fouled by Blake Griffin. And then at the end of that game, Chris Paul does not get 3 free throws for a very similar play. So let's look at this first of all and give us the insight of what the rule is and how it's supposed to be refereed. Was the Kevin Love call correct in the beginning?
Well, in the first play we have with Kevin Love, the key has been and the weight has been not to give shots as a second thought or as a thought after a foul. So the weight has been not to give this play. But in this particular case, if the official feels that the gathering of the ball has occurred and the shooting motion is in process, then this would be a three-point shot. Now, I think this is a very tight one, and credit to him to give this one. But as we see the next one, that confuses me a little bit. And that also tells me, not that the official's playing games, but that there is a semblance of not complete a foundation on this. So I think there's an unequal balance in the minds of how to really digest this play.
So it didn't matter if it was released after the horn, if the foul was before the horn.
Right. Remember, the contact stops the play except what? On continuation. So if a guy is in a shooting motion or in a contact situation for a shooting motion as in continuation, then we know the game stopped there, and the rest of that is just part of the and parcel of the complete act.
And then as far as your take on the CP3, you feel like he should have gotten 3 free throws for the same reason.
Yeah, actually, this is a really much clearer play. And I'm very surprised that the crew did not follow up with this play, not based on the first one for equality, just based on the act. And the act seemed much clearer that Chris Paul was fouled clearly in the shooting motion. As a matter of fact, I think he had both hands on the ball immediately, and then upon him going up to release it, he was then fouled, I think, by Barea. So that's a play we should have had a 3, and that's a play we didn't. And by the way, that was a game-ending situation, and that was a critical call. I was sorry to see the misjudgment on that play based on one we already had. But again, I think it goes back to determining what this is all about, and the staff is still processing this. They need to see more and more plays of this nature to get this down.
Well, let's move on to the Spurs were playing against the Warriors, and at the very end of the game, a crucial part of the game, Splitter is able to tip the ball in, and then on review, or without review, but when we saw it on the replay, it was clearly a goaltend. So walk us through the situation, how this could have been done differently to perhaps get a more accurate call.
You know what's interesting about this play is something that is a little befuddling, and that's that the officials had the opportunity, with this time remaining in the game, to go and confirm their decision. They allow a tap in or not allow a tap in, or if it was a block shot on a goaltend, they often have an opportunity to go to the monitor and see this play. And the good thing about the monitors this year is that we now have a camera view over the top of the board. Now, it's not directly over the top of the board, so but that even tells you more that if any part of the ball is in the imaginary cylinder on a tip in or on a wipe away, then obviously, basket interference has occurred. And as you look at the review on this, especially from that particular review, you will see that the ball is tipped while it is in the cylinder above the rim. And by the way, if you took the camera directly to the middle of the hoop, over the hoop, you'd probably see it more. So it's kind of an interesting play that, one, it was a tough play for the naked eye. Two, they had an opportunity to go see it, and they didn't.
Which referee is in charge of that, of goaltending in this situation?
Well, when you have a ball that's in front of the rim and you're questioning, certainly the number one guy that takes care of goaltending and basket interference is the trail official. That's the person furthest away. He has got a great perspective. But sometimes he's lined up and he can't tell how far that ball is off the rim. So the official on the sideline, called the slot or the center in college, now he can tell if that ball is off the rim or not. And you want to get down into a position to see that, especially at the end of the game. It's that Murphy Law business. Whatever you think is going to happen or isn't going to happen is going to happen. I'm sorry to see that one wasn't followed up on when there was an opportunity.
Let's move on to the Warriors playing the Lakers, and an interesting plays because it deals with the notion of plays happening outside of the specific flagrant foul call by Spates. And so I'm just going to throw this out here because we had a series of events. We had Nick Young dunking the ball on the Warriors, and then he coming down the next play and sort of doing a weird sort of hard foul in the middle of the court. Then they isolate on him with a guy who doesn't normally isolate at all in Kent Bazemore. And then they come back down. Nick Young has another lane to go, and he gets, basically tackled. So, Ronnie, give us your take on that. I mean, I might be a little crazy and just think that these things are connected, but how do referees deal with all these things? And then, most importantly, was this a correct flagrant 2 call?
Well, first of all, it was definitely a flagrant 2 call, and ejection was appropriate. There's no question about it. However, you're right about the physicality and the temperament and the socialization, if you will, of what goes on in the game. And the officials are aware of that because these are the things that fall into the game management. You got to be able to sniff out if there's problems here, or there people are a little hot under the collar, or they didn't like the last play, or a showboating situation. And sometimes I think coaches even have said, nobody comes down the lane without being hit. And I don't think this is good sportsmanship. This is not the way to play the game. He gets a nice dunk. He has an unusual, awkward, arrhythmic foul at midcourt that he commits. And all of a sudden, he's going to get another dunk. And, in the minds of some people, that might have registered with Spates. But because he was there, he decided to say that ain't going to happen. And I think that ain't going to happen is cool, except the manner in which that ain't going to happen and how you did it is not cool. Because basketball is a game where we're really out there in our skivvies, and we're vulnerable to getting hurt, especially when we're in the air. And a dunk is a dunk is a dunk. You might want to put a hard foul on there, but you don't want to take anybody out or grab him around. And I think he kind of tried to hold him. But even though, some plays you just have to relinquish to the game.
Was the score had any influence to the fact that it was already a 20-point blowout? Did the refs sort of figure, let's just get him out of here so we don't have any more escalation? Is that part of the thought process?
Yeah, it is. That has been a culture of officiating. And by the way, it's one of the cultures that has a real hard time of getting away, because officials are supposed to officiate every play independently of the play before or what have you. Every play stands on its own merit, so to speak. And the foul stands on its own merit. But obviously, when you're dealing with people on the floor, there are situations that come up. And I just think that most officials, when the game is towards its end, or there's a great difference in score, if they see that somebody can foul up this game into a problem because they're upset, they're more apt to get rid of a player by ejecting him, so to speak, if they think he's a problem. And I think that's because of the safety of the game and the management of the game.
Well, to give a nice companion piece to this play, we have the Clippers versus the Timberwolves, and the game was pretty chippy. The refereeing, seemed to be a little bit all over the place, as we showed before. And we have Kevin Love going to the hole hard, and Matt Barnes, taking a hard foul. Did he merit getting thrown out of the game as a flagrant too?
I think with this particular crew, when you first look at this play, it looks like an unnecessary and excessive act. And that's what a flagrant 2 is. Flagrant 1 is unnecessary, but it appeared unnecessary and excessive. So when the officials even looked at it, I think they had that in their mind even the more than the actual detail of the play. And they said, you know what, we're going to go with it. However, as we found out later, as you read up on stuff, the NBA decided to downgrade the flagrant 2 and penalize Barnes with a flagrant 1. Now, of course, the game is over and but the good news is it was downgraded. And I think also the good news is that the officials felt that this kind of action looked really worse than it was. Even after their review, they didn't really feel comfortable. And I think that's their prerogative on a play. You will find not often downgrades, but in this case, yes.
Here's what I find amazing. Now, you have to remember, these are both UCLA Bruins, and you know that they're friends. They didn't overlap when they played, I don't believe. No, they didn't. But they have the same coach, and they must have a relationship. So what's fascinating about this, if you watch it very carefully, is once Kevin Love looks over after he got hit hard to kind of like glare, he realizes that it's Matt Barnes, and he says it twice. He goes, "My bad." Like, my bad, I'm not going to instigate with you because you're my fellow Bruin, or something like that. But then you watch Matt Barnes continue to talk trash to him in a kind of a menacing way. You can see it in the thing. So my feeling is that being in the middle of that with a referee, that very well could have influenced their decision on the court at that time.
You know what, Coach? You ought to try some refereeing, because that's a pretty good assessment of the situation, and that's supportive of the officials with that insight, and I like that. Don't forget, each person comes to earn their living in a certain way in which they do their thing, and Matt Barnes has become a disruptor in a way, certainly a talent. Certainly a kind of a Cinderella Dennis Rodman. He's not completely there because Dennis is so unique, but he's got that kind of flavor to his game. And so he comes to that game regardless of Love or anyone else. And credit to Love when he turns around and recognizes it's an alumni. But I think that, Matt Barnes' deal is I got to stay in this league because I do these kind of plays. I'm not afraid. Every team wants one, yada, yada, yada. And that's why he did what he did. But I think the detail, like I always say, the devil is in the details. And I think you bring out a great one. That was part of and parcel of what I think the officials felt when they went over there to confirm what they originally had believed.
I mean, yeah, from the bench, especially if you have a player on your team that is like that, these things don't always, the way that Matt Barnes behaves isn't always just sort of like, oh, I'm being unfairly persecuted. He clearly was instigating, so I can easily understand the thought process where they're going to say, listen, he is already instigating for no reason when the guy is trying to actually, be friendly to him. It would have been a lovely moment if they just kind of hugged and walked away. So I can see for the same reason they threw out Spates. But even though the only problem here is it's a close game, and it did have a profound effect because if you remember in overtime, the Clippers were forced to have, this is a coaching thing, but they were forced to have Jared Dudley playing the 4, where at the very least they could have had maybe Matt Barnes instead. And so it did have a little bit more of a profound effect on the game. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm always going to side on the side of getting guys out of the game who aren't playing, with an open heart and have some sort of agenda to create something. That's what it looked like Matt Barnes was trying to do.
Yeah, I think you have it right there. And in officiating, you've got to smell that out individually from a player or perceptionally from a team. A team may have been in that locker room coming out with the motivation from a coach about how to take care of business, and hard play, which can tip over into flagrant foul territory, can be one of the things that just come out of that. Not saying a coach is trying to deal with that, but he's got the guy so wrapped up that can happen. I think the play was done well, and I actually I like the fact that nothing else happened with that. But unfortunately, you pay for your own actions. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those instances where Matt Barnes, and the good news is, and I think it's a credit to him and the office that it was downgraded because there was a lot of ball on that play. It looked a little bit better after a constant look at it. And I think that was good. Good decision all the way around.
Well, I find it fascinating that in the week of Christmas, when we're supposed to love our fellow man the most, we have a whole bunch of these flagrant fouls. In fact, we had one with Paul Pierce last night in the open quarter on Hill. And hopefully everyone's going to make up and have a great Christmas Day slate of games with no more of these flagrant 2s coming out.
Well, the league is really very competitive. And the guys that are on the high side are struggling. And the guys that are new, they're acting less new than one would think. And the league is very competitive in this vein. So, one thing about officiating is that when you come out, it's a Final Four every night. And the talent-laden league, it's a matter of getting cohesiveness with the team for the teams to win. I mean, look at Portland doing what they're doing, and no one expected that. This is what's going on in the league. So you got to come ready, whether you're Team A, Team B, or the one I always support, Team C.
Well, I hope you have a terrific Merry Christmas and a great New Year week here. And I hope everyone out there is enjoying their chestnuts on open fire as they go over these plays.
Nat King Cole, no question. And happy holidays to you too, Coach. It's been great so far, and it just goes to show you that starting 2014, this league will continue being competitive, and there'll be a lot of plays and a lot of questions from the fans. So keep them rolling on that, and we'll try to decipher them for them.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us, sports fans. And don't forget, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in?
I'm in, Coach. Thanks for having me, as always.
You got it. Merry Christmas.